Number 1. Note that this story has been marked as verified on the subreddit Let's Not Meet. I've shared a not as creepy event that's happened to me, but this particular occurrence never put me in any jeopardy. It was more my neighbors, but creepy nonetheless. Keep in mind that I am unsure of the exact age I was during this series of events, but it took place over a majority of my life thus far, and promptly ended in 2011, when I was about 11. I remember most of these things happening, and my mom has filled me in on some of the details since. Not sure if it belongs in this subreddit, but I really don't ever want to meet this person again. I live in a good neighborhood in a good city. It was being built when we moved there, but I always remember these two being my neighbors. Their names were Betty and Jeff. The first interaction I remember having with either of them was when Betty gave my sister and I a whole bunch of McDonald's toys. You know how they display every one of the toys inside? We got one of those displays. I was 5 and my sister was 2, and I remember being ecstatic as any younger child would be. My mom later informed me that Betty would tell her that we were the cutest kids in the world, and that she wished she had children like us. Flash forward a few years later, where I'm guessing I was about 7 or 8. I was hanging out with another girl my age, and was also my neighbor down the street. We left my house, and we were walking to hers. When we got outside, we saw Betty throwing a bunch of Jeff's shit out the second-story window. I vividly remember her screaming profanities as she tossed an old TV set out the window, and smelling cologne that she must have thrown out the window as well. My friend and I rushed to get inside, and just thought that she was crazy. Between the age of 8 and 10, Betty and Jeff must have had a few more fights. There's nothing that I can remember, but I do remember my mother telling me that Betty confronted my dad. My dad had been outside doing yard work at around 8:30 or 9 p.m. It was summertime, so the sun was still out, and kids were still yelling and playing. All of a sudden, Betty marched out of her house and straight to my dad. She yelled at him for keeping everyone awake with the sound of a leaf blower, and probably called him a motherfucker a few times. I would understand her anger more if it was dark out, but it still kind of confuses me. Maybe she had a right to be angry. One day, when I was 10, I had returned home from school to the sight of police cars and a bunch of yellow caution tape surrounding Betty and Jeff's house. I ran inside and asked my mom what had happened, but she had no clue. She later found out from my other neighbor that Betty had died, possibly being thrown down the stairs or something like that. They were trying to figure out if it was self-inflicted, or if Jeff had finally lost his shit and killed the crazy bitch. A few days later, I was outside by myself drawing with chalk. As soon as I got outside, I saw Jeff walk over to his glass door. He hadn't been arrested or anything yet, and was still presumed innocent. I thought I had nothing to worry about, so I continued on and retrieved my chalk from the garage. I began to draw when I noticed that Jeff was staring out his door, and staring directly at me. This continued for 10 minutes. I eventually got creeped the fuck out and went to tell my dad. By the time he came outside with me, Jeff had left the door. That's when I realized that maybe Jeff was the batshit crazy one. In April 2011, Jeff was convicted of aggravated murder and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 30 years. He gave Betty a fatal dose of antifreeze, and I'm still unsure of whether or not he actually pushed her drugged and dead body down the stairs for good measure. After reading an article on it, Betty claimed that Jeff was very abusive and would not let her do anything without his permission. That would explain her behavior, but I'm still not completely convinced that she was entirely innocent either. A new couple has since moved into their house. They're completely normal from what I can tell, knock on wood, and we haven't had any murderous events on my street since. Number 2. Please note, I am a 13-year-old female. This happened about 1 week ago. My mom and I went to our local craft store, Michael's, to buy home decor and stuff I needed for a project. My mother trusts me greatly, so she allowed me to go get what I needed, expecting me to eventually find her somewhere else in the giant store. I needed some felt, so I went to get it. That's when the guy walked into the store. He looked stoned as fuck. His beard was matted and greasy, and he was bald. He looked about 40 or 50 years old. When I walked past him, my nostrils were met with the single most disgusting smell ever. I tried to get away as fast as possible. Now I was far enough away, and on the aisle that had the stuff I needed. My arms are full of felt, buttons, and styrofoam as I went out to find my mother. I got out of the aisle, and it's that fucking smell again. The guy was standing right behind me. I walked away as fast as I could. I found my mom by the fall decorations, and put my stuff in the cart. For the next half hour, I helped her pick out certain decorations for our house, all the while feeling like I was being watched. A few minutes later, I told my mom I have to go to the bathroom. She's okay with it. I asked an employee, and they say it's in the back right corner. Bad feelings overwhelmed me every step closer. The hallway into the bathroom area was dim. I walked into the ladies' room and went into a stall. The door opened. That smell. I whispered to myself, "Oh fuck."
Hey kid, wanna come home with me?
I pretended like I wasn't there. I hear in the background someone telling the man to get out of the women's room. After, I found my mom, paid for the stuff, and got the fuck into the car. I still haven't told her yet, only my friends at school. So, creepy craft store dude, let's not meet again.